Fam, what's good? James Hicks here, and welcome to the Creative Collab. Today they're all good shows, but this one's, listen, extra special because anytime you can bring family on, you can chop it up, it's always going to be a good time. As we know, as I know, and as my guest knows, I've told them that the primary audience here are creators, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, those that want to turn on the lights, press record, and do the thing, right? Tell stories. But a lot of times that's a second thought as opposed to the business aspect of doing digital publishing, digital content creation, and things of that nature. So he wrote a post on LinkedIn, and I locked onto it. I latched onto it, talking about aligning your story and your audience to craft a winning go-to-market plan. That's what we're gonna get in today. Y'all, listen. Without further ado, let me bring my guy on so we can chop it up and talk. I'm not even gonna do like a full introduction because I want my guy to do his own introduction. Dre, how are you, sir? Say what's going on. And you color coordinated to the nines, boy, with that red. Talk to us.
Coordinated. I'm living every day with an enthusiasm unknown to mankind, my guy. What's going on?
Right, that right there. See how you come in with. I got to make sure my energy level is slightly raised too, because you coming in high, brother. I love that. I love. Dre, listen. I'm not even gonna pretend like. Listen, we family, so all of that out the way. We may end up dropping some 4-letter words, or we may be saying some type of things, but that's just what we gonna do. First and
Yes,
foremost,
sir.
folks, if you don't know this man right here, give him his props in the comments. This man is a veteran, so we thank him for his service. We thank him and his family members who are also in the military for their service. We're gonna start there, but pretend we're on an elevator. Give us a 35,000 foot pitch in terms of who you are and what it is that you do with your agency now that you are no longer active duty within the service, sir.
Active duty, world's finest Navy, 12 years. And that's really where I cut my teeth doing IT and technical work, which led me, as I got out of the world's finest Navy, into the tech startup world, where I started a company that revolved around securing websites, scaled that into not just the security aspects of it, but really helping folks through some pretty trying scenarios with those web assets. And it was subsequently acquired by GoDaddy in 2017. Spent 7 years there building security products and other products at GoDaddy, running a $350 million product portfolio on the security side. Left there earlier this year, and I've taken some downtime to move to Texas, which I'm enjoying the hell out of that, and just ramped up my personal brand back up to kind of help, platform startups and helping startups, early stage software companies in general, achieving clarity. Really thinking about the health and scalability of their companies, enabling them to really focus on what matters, helping them efficiently execute, and then certainly telling the story, because that's the big part. A lot of times we make some awesome stuff and we just don't align that with how people are thinking about the value we can bring them.
Wow. So I get that. I understand that. And I'm gonna call you to task on this.
Sure.
I have learned that changing some of that dialogue, changing some of the wording that we use. How can we bring that down a little bit more to a layman's perspective? What your agency and what your organization does? What's the value that you bring to an early stage startup in terms of when they bring you into the room? Are you helping them set up the web infrastructure? Are you helping them set up business processes and standard operating procedures? When you finally put that suit on, because I haven't seen you but a couple of times in a suit.
I dress up. I clean up nice, man.
I know. Right? I've seen you in your dress blues, but I've seen you in a suit once or twice. But what is it when they get Dre in the room in front of the conference table on the whiteboard talking about strategy, talking about business process and things like that?
Yeah, I think what you find at large with startup companies, let's take on in the tech world. We've been in the WordPress space for a number of years. There's a number of adjacencies there that we've lived around in terms of tech and stuff. And you see a lot of startups come up. They have brilliant ideas. They have maybe a really strong technical staff. They're able to envision their ideas, get into a scenario where market fit is maybe coming to the table. But it's like, where do we kind of move this awesome technical idea, these resources around the engineering of this thing into a place where we can fulfill some type of scalability to provide or expand that value to a larger audience, right? How do we scale, the operations and the execution of that value proposition into a place where more people know it's there, right? We know that we can go service them. So I'm really focusing on startups, maybe even early stage companies that have found maybe some market fit. They know they have something there, but maybe just don't understand how to focus, build the strategy and focus on what's really important to scale. Okay. So focusing on strategy operations, right? So the whole, aiming at really deeply understanding their business and helping them craft really actionable strategies, right? Building a full-fledged strategy around what their vision, what open opportunities they have to expand forward with some really fine focus lens on the prize. If you're it's better to be good at one thing than I think mediocre at a lot, right? And oftentimes people start to spread their energy all over the place, and because they have this thing that's maybe working, so let's amplify that horizontally versus really getting that to a place where now you can really take that market fit and expand that, and then later look at adjacencies to provide further value. So that's a focus area.
I love that.
But that's really the strategy part, right? Like that's how we think about the business and what we could be when we grow up. Focused opportunities, maybe some metrics, the early metrics there that you see an opportunity to amplify. But then how do you execute, right? Like what is that real true customer value achieved at the end of the day? Do you understand your audience versus the product or the service or the thing that you're creating? And have you really understood or broken that down in a consumable way to understand what the true value that they're looking for out of your product or service? Now, I think that's a really strong focus point in understanding how to map objectives and key results, really map the underlying work that needs to be done to create that customer value achievement. You kind of work backwards from there to all the way through like your acquisition channels, right? So like if this is the value that I'm creating for my customer, how are they actively using that thing to get the customer value achieved? How do they actually set that up? Like, how do they get from the point of acquisition into, okay, I want to purchase this thing. I want to set this thing up. Now I'm actively using it. Yes, I'm reaching efficacy with what I purchased from you, right? So really going through that whole journey, that customer journey, not only enables you to make better decisions to reduce friction and provide better value for them, but also enables you to actually create a good functional execution plan as to what needs to be done to reach those objectives, right? So that's really, I think, that next phase beyond the strategy is, all right, how do we really think about where we want to be, what we're going to provide our customers, and then that gives you an idea of how to incept those products, those services in a way to map all the work, to map all of the underlying resources that need to go into that. Who's responsible for these things? How are those going to be delivered? What does that time frame look like? How do we build a roadmap? And how the hell do we really go execute that?
Yeah,
so that's really kind of like the high level.
That's that 35,000 foot level. See, coming from a Navy man, right? Who I would expect, submarine talk or something of that nature. I'm Air Force man.
I was a carrier sailor, man. USS John C. Stennis, CVN 74. The floating city is 74, baby.
Somebody better recognize. Listen, we got leadership here on the line. I appreciate you going into that detail because you said some things in there that I wanted to resonate with the audience because you talked about the value that you can bring is to organizations, regardless of their industry, right? So it is just not a manufacturing organization. It's just not a technology company. It's just not an apparel company, or whatever the case may be. You talked about strategies that are overarching in business. Has your conversations changed since you started? Right, in the years like when you left the GoDaddies and the Securies and you broke off and you did your own thing. Now here in 2020, what year is this? 2024 have
almost 25.
Right. Have those conversations changed as you're interacting and talking to businesses and entrepreneurs, things like that? Or are they still pretty much the same common sense boilerplate conversations that you have? I'm just getting curious.
I'm a Chargers fan.
Come on, man. Who got it better than we?
No, and that's exactly it, right? Like think about that whole scenario with the Chargers. We've been lackluster, unfocused, really broken from a cultural perspective. We don't understand how to win. And I think a lot of that is because we overcomplicated defensive schemes, right? We brought in who was supposed to be a top tier defensive coordinator as a head coach, and yet we couldn't execute. Overcomplicated our offensive schemes, and we weren't able to move the ball from a running perspective. Our line was mediocre, and even though we had pretty decent wide receiver experience and talent and a top 5 NFL quarterback, we just couldn't we couldn't execute. And the thing is, we were overcomplicating it all. And what it comes down to is bringing in strong leadership to help you make decisions to build culture for success and winning. Bring it back to brass tacks. Focus on what really matters. And then from there, expand. But if you're not implementing the foundational principles in a way that they could be executed in a way to help you build more complexities, right? You're never going to succeed. So one is making the decision to actually execute. Two, building a really strong concept foundationally of how that can be accomplished. Understanding what that goal in mind is and what that audience is, and implementing, I think, really just foundational principles that you're executing at a high level. It all starts there. So you ask if that discussion has changed. Maybe at some points, I think that there's a fluctuation in the discussions based on maybe the business or the that segment of my audience that I might be talking to. But it really all leads back to executing the foundational principles efficiently.
Going into these conversations with these organizations, with these individuals, do you find yourself competing with technology? So again, now that you've reiterated, now that you've relaunched, rebranded, all those things, now everyone under the sun, everyone at the barbershop has access to a large language model, and they think that they can just use technology to help them do the thing better. Do you see those tools hindering your expertise? Again, you walk in as a consultant, you walk in as the expert, but again, someone says, you know what, I got this. I can just tell Perplexity or ChatGPT or whoever, Sora, Gemini, all these to do it for me. Write my standard operating procedures, write my contracts and things of that nature. Write my business plan. I would never allow an algorithm to. Okay, I'm sorry, but I guess I may have answered the question yourself. Are you seeing competition from folks or pushback from folks as you go in with your expertise when they say, I now have about 80 to 90% of the tools already accessible to me on the internet?
I don't see that exactly. So certainly there's some overlap.
I'm sorry. And the reason that I asked that, because again, you specifically say you're dealing with early stage companies, right? So again, those that aren't necessarily established already, that are just getting up and running, still working out of their garage, and like, man, finances and budgets are already tight. Can we bring in Armeda to do what they do there? Sorry about that, man.
Yeah, and the returns pretty straightforward, even in the short term and long term of connecting all of these things. And I think all of those tools are critical in giving part of the voice, and I think collaboratively with tool sets, with the appropriate processes, with the appropriate leadership in those organizations to bring this all together. I think the value proposition's there. There's certainly going to be overlap in how some of those tools can maybe dictate some of those discussion points based on whatever models they're using and so on. Excellent. Let's take those points as well as part of this. But ultimately, the methodology or the flow of operations is a really crucial component. You need to have buy-in from all of those leaders in that organization as part of that. And then you consume as much of that data, just like these models do. They're consuming all this data and they're learning from that. Think of it from that perspective, as that leadership team and this startup is consuming all of those points, using this framework to bridge all of these areas into efficient execution and telling their story. Those models They're going to give you interesting outputs. They are certainly not going to give you a true personal output in the end. They're going to give you what AI gives you, right? So you still have to come in and piece those things together. So I see it more as a tool to augment this whole process to building a scalable opportunity for the business, more so than something that I'd be competing with personally.
Love it. Love it. Perfect segue for me to ask you, because you start talking about principles, you start talking about models, you start talking about practices, things like what is DreX? What is that, the DreX method? And come on, I want to call it DreX. Don't tell me that you pronounce it DreX, because the way you spell it, it's the DreX methodology. So
the DreX method works.
I'm gonna call it potato. You can call it potato, but this is what we gonna listen. Twitter will always be Twitter. It'll never be X for me.
As long as you call it something, right? As long as you call it.
Okay.
As long as you call it, it's working. Listen, I think we talked about it a bit, Big Dog, right? Like it really becomes a methodology from taking you at that early stage, startup to early stage, right? And I see a difference there. Startup, although kind of a blanket term, early stage could mean, post Series A, could mean you've grown a short bit versus, the 1-2 person shop out there that's maybe still struggling to find market fit. So I think that there needs to be some clear delineation between those, but I fit somewhere in there in terms of offering services based on the DreX model, right? The DreX method, which we talked a bit about, really that operational planning piece. It's product or service management, right? And then it's really telling that story. So the focus, the execution, and the storytelling. So if you look even at the service plans here, that initial part is kind of that first phase we talked about. So operational planning, how do we assess your current state? Let's really learn about the business and what you're doing, right? And then let's think about how we can set up some realistic goals for you in the short and the long term, from a strategic standpoint. And then how do we simplify what you're focusing on today into what you can focus on as you go to execute and look to scale. Implementing and integrating and growing that scientific mindset. How are we using data to measure results versus what we did at Security in the early days is grab a handful of spaghetti, throw it at the wall, and we hope that shit works out. That's not a realistically scalable approach for most, right? Like you might get lucky. Chances are that you're not. So how do we build that scientific mindset? Like let's really build that muscle, and it should be in all of your decision making. That doesn't mean that everything is completely data driven, but it certainly needs to be data informed. There is some gut to that to make sure that you're building what makes most sense. And overall, all of these mechanics, again, using that first service plan that I have there is around the operational planning. So collectively, we're looking to lower your operational risk by really defining what these core principles are, what this strategy is. The DreX method takes that as the initial pillar of the overall framework, and then bridges that into how we think about the overall management of those operations into some type of delivery, right? So I'm calling it product management today, but that could mean a number of things. And it goes into those functional things we talked about earlier. So identifying what that customer value achieved is, right? Like how the hell do we know? Like, do we know really what the value is we're delivering to customers and what they expect, right? And so mapping that from the strategy from our customers, based on that, building metrics that matter in those key phases of customer value achieved, right? Building not just metrics to measure those specific pillars, but overall, how are we identifying how we're performing against what we want to accomplish for the company? What are those key results, right? So
wait a minute. Say that one more again. My English is off. That right there, say that one more time. That was pretty cool.
Well, in terms of, you're not just mapping key metrics for each one of the phases of customer value achieved, but like overall, what are the key results, right, that you need to build against that tie into the overall strategy for the company, overall strategy of the product, right? Yeah. Because we often go, hey, we need to go build this thing, but what the hell is that moving? Like, how do we know that like that's actually performing towards the strategy of the company and what we want to accomplish, right? So if those things are not united and you don't have a way to understand what your objectives are based on what your strategy is, like you're going to get key results, but do they really move the needle for you and your company, right? Do they move the needle for your products? Do they move the needle for customer value achieved, what you're trying to accomplish for your customers? So that's a very crucial component of this segment of executing efficiently is understanding what you're doing and why you're doing it, and is it really moving forward? It helps you make decisions as to whether you're investing in the right places from an engineering perspective, whether it's marketing components, all of those cross-functional things that need to happen for you to be successful. Like, are you focused in the right areas, and are you breaking them down in consumable chunks to be able to iterate on them and pivot if you're not?
Yeah.
Right. So that's that second kind of component there. Now, as part of that, you also want to make sure that you're really delivering delightful user experiences, right? Like, so that needs to be kind of brought in at this phase. That's more important, I think, in this phase than telling a story, because you can tell a story, get people in, and if it's just gobbledygook garbage, like it's going to be a problem. So the counterpart to that, because I think that's really the triad of good product development, product management, is not just the product side and understanding the problems that you're solving and what your customer values, but also giving them those delightful experiences and ensuring that you have enabled your engineering functions to be efficient and to be part of that whole process of building something that makes sense for your customer. So that's that second piece of the DreX method. The last piece of that framework is telling the story. Like, we need to make sure that we're properly marketing this product, and we're going to market in a way that's going to maximize our footprint, that's going to appropriately align with the different customer segments and personas that we feel we can bring value to, or that we are bringing value to today. So expanding that message in a way that makes sense for them to consume, and for them to make insightful decisions as to how to use your products. So you have to dive into really understanding and learning the product, and that's everybody involved in that function. Certainly understanding that audience, like who are you really talking to? Like, who are you selling your products to? Who are you servicing? There might be various personas that you're looking to target, and it's meaningful to make sure that you're aligning your story to those audiences, understanding what's happening in the market and across the competitive landscape. So really analyzing those components to understand how you fit into that, or how others fit into what you're trying to accomplish. There's a lot of validating functions in that, and certainly meaningful to understand how customers that you might be working with are looking at the value in the area that you're targeting. And the last couple of pieces that I know it's kind of long-winded here, but this is the overall methodology, and these three, I think, pillars, and these tenets within it, I think, are the functional pieces that need to happen for you to get a really broad picture across it all. Is price modeling, and making sure that you're fitting in a place where there's a range of pricing that makes sense for the base that you're working with, but also making sure that merchandising and those activities are maximizing the opportunity for the business, and then certainly getting into the different placements and promotion. You are doing a wonderful job of that, from this activity, the discussion, the voice, certainly the underlying tactics that happen with SEO, and all of those things, giving guidance in those areas to expand consistently over time.
Which is the hardest of that, right? Again, so let me ask this, and this is a selfish question, just kind of curious, because we probably deal with a lot of technology folks, a lot of engineering folks, and they can do the operational piece, right? We can tell you the zeros and ones. We can show you again on a whiteboard. We can code. We can do all that stuff. But telling that story, right? Being able to switch the conversation from kind of the technical conversation to the business conversation to the emotional conversation. This is why you need it. to be able to do the Steve Jobs thing. And I mentioned Steve Jobs. Y'all know I worked at Apple for 10 years, so I'm a member of the cult of Mac, and I will always be. I'm going to get Dre over to Mac one of these days. He keep messing with them PCs. Anyway, the storytelling piece and the emoting. You see, I talk with my hands a lot, the jazz hands.
Right.
How do you get an engineer or technology person, a data center operations manager, someone in that box to be able to tell that story to where it resonates? Or do you see that as being a challenging part in what you do when you go into an organization, or is it some of the other pillars? And again, just a curious question from my side.
It varies, right?
Mm,
We've found that like even on the product side, it's like, cool, let's concentrate on the delivery. Like what are the epics and tasks that we're
mm,
accomplishing to get this thing?
mm,
But it's like, why are we doing that? Like, what is the meaning behind the work that we're doing, and how does it tie back to where we want to be as a company, right? So like think of that more like the internal, really finding a path to tell the story internally, so that everybody aligns on as to the why, not the what necessarily there. So I think that's part of it, more like the internal piece of it. So I do see that a lot, and then the external storytelling becomes kind of complicated if you're not, I think, set up with that alignment internally. And once you set that alignment internally, I think it becomes there's some clarity, and I think maybe build some consistency across the organization on how to tell that story externally, and then I think that builds confidence. So really defining that core story internally, and then expanding that externally becomes a lot easier. So yeah, those are kind of the two core areas I think that I see the most conflict, and
mm.
they both certainly revolve around the storytelling, like
Yeah.
100%. But
Yeah.
one internal, you set that foundationally, there's alignment there. It builds confidence because now you have clarity in what that story is.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder if that's not the hardest, but just the most challenging piece. Because I always say also that I can't motivate other people, and you have to kind of have that innate amongst yourselves. And again, military folks talking amongst, listen, you gonna get up when it's time to get up, and
Oh,
you're gonna do the
100%,
work,
you're going
right?
to get up. Yeah.
You're gonna
Yeah.
have to be self motivated. I can't be a third person, a third entity that gives you that piece, and being
No, but
able,
that's a cultural thing though, too, right? Like
yeah,
when you think about operationally, finding out what your current state is, those are some probably hard questions that you need to answer,
yeah,
even in this methodology or others.
before you come into the building.
Or even when I'm there, if we
Okay.
discover that like you've got some people that just don't give two shits to be there,
Yeah.
or they're not producing based on what you want to be as a company, you're going to have to make some hard decisions. Okay. So finding strong cultural fit from a partnership perspective, leadership perspective, resourcing perspective is integral. And that's why I say when you get into that kind of the delivery piece of building efficiencies, if everybody understands what overall the strategy is, and you've built a culture of not just understanding but buy-in there, it enables you to connect the product functions, the engineering functions, the UX functions in a way that they work cohesively. But it really starts back at the beginning stages of that. You don't want to be here and deliver against what this thing is. Maybe we should have a discussion as to what that might look like for you and the company moving forward, because we're going to build this thing, right? Or we have built this thing. We want to expand the value of that thing we built, and we want you to be a part of that. But there needs to be some buy-in here, right? You can't think you're going to build with some type of, maybe, I don't want to say toxic, but in some instances, some of those folks may be a bit toxic, and it's my way or the highway, and that's just not a realistically not a good way to think about scaling your company when you have that type of maybe distraction there. So the operational piece comes with really making some strong decisions on where to focus and who to focus on.
And
right?
that's why folks need to bring you in, right? Having those hard conversations, and again, folks, I'm glad that we're having the conversation at an interesting layer, right? We're not getting too specific. We're staying somewhat broad, right? We're still I always do plane analogies, right? So 35,000 foot level. I do
Yeah.
plane analogies and sports analogies. You know that. Sports analogies coming. You just hold on. But the fact that your methodology, your services, your value coming in, I quote something all the time, and I'm not sure if she's listening. I'm sure I'm going to send her to playback this, but people pay attention to what they pay for as well. Right.
Facts.
So there's value in bringing you in, bringing your team in, talking about the DreX methodology, and having that end-to-end conversation. You already, as the business owner, the early stage startup, whatever, need to know what it is you want to do. I, Dre, can help you with mining and getting through that minefield, right? I can help you with, again, those hard conversations. Again, I don't want to speak for you or anything, but I think that's, again, what folks need to understand, that, again, it's not just a content creator. It's not just a digital entrepreneur. It's not just a engineering technologist, whatever I want to call myself this week. It's not just those types of businesses. It's every business that's out there that needs to have some of these core methodologies, core principles already laid out or in process. And you can come in and help them do that. That's what I'm talking about. I only hang out with winners, y'all. I only like this man right here.
Yeah, I think yeah, in a lot of instances, I mean, you mentioned earlier, like some startups maybe aren't in a position to hire in a name your C-level person, right? And then that level of leadership. And there is a cost to that, right? Like there's certain areas that I think tactically you're going to focus on, and cost is probably a little different, probably a little lower. But being able to bring in leadership to do these things, even if fractionally, you're paying someone to help really with these core areas of the business while you're executing.
That's good stuff, man. That's good stuff. Let me ask you. All right, we're gonna bring it down. We're gonna take off our tech hats, our nerd hats, even though that's where we tend to live. You already hinted at them. What's going on with you? What's going on with your Chargers, brother? I want to break some ice, right? So I want to kind of take down the guard. I just want to deviate from our questions because no one's asking questions. I see folks watching, but it's all good. So I'm gonna ask the questions that I want to ask. How you feeling, man? What's going on with Herbert? Come on.
I'm feeling about as good as you can at this part of the season, right? Yeah. I think the signs are there for longer term success, and this was always going to be a year of, I don't want to call it a rebuild, but let's say the changing of the guard, an alleviation of undue pressure, motivation to build culture in a winning environment. And we're seeing that happen, even if the record isn't, the same as the Chiefs in the AFC West right now. It's not a problem. It's not a problem. We're in every single game with every single winning team that we've played. And sitting at 8-5 going into the last 4 games of the season, we're still high up in the playoff hopeful run with a wild card position as it sits today. Yeah. I think that what we'll find as we get more into the positional or resource changes that will happen next year, as we look at interior O-line, as we look at wide receiver and tight end, right? Running back, maybe we start to get some of those core pieces that today maybe aren't big names that you might know, that aren't producing where we need them to be. We never had all the pieces we've had in the past. In fact, we have less pieces than we had last year. We're already 3 games in the green, comparatively speaking, to the last season. So I am very hopeful, excited, and I think that when it comes down to brass tacks, to have that type of culture there, I've never seen it in my 30 plus years of fandom. So I'm excited.
Okay, I'm looking at the last 4. You get at least 2. I know you're gonna win at least 2. I'm not gonna say which 2, but that game.
I will say this: all of them are winnable.
Okay, there we go. Listen, you got. We'll leave it there. That's true. They're winnable, and then I'll just like text you after each game, and if you win,
hey, Sunday was winnable. We were right there with them.
Yeah, you were. Yeah, you were. It's close. Hey, 1917. I got the I got the numbers right here because I wanted to be accurate when I talked to you. On a
so that's one thing. I moved to Texas this year. I couldn't sell my season ticket, so I'm still flying out for some of the home games at SoFi Arena. Oh yeah.
That right there. So I know a lot of folks, I know a lot of Raiders fans who are doing the exact same thing, but they bounce back and forth right between either when it was Oakland and then LA, now it's Vegas. So man, that's got to be wow. SoFi too. Y'all got that
Oh
big
yeah,
money down there at SoFi.
it's
That's that
almost
hardball
overwhelming
money.
walking into that place. You're overloaded, sensory overload immediately the moment you
Yeah.
walk into this place. Absolutely brilliant. So it's a fun time, man. You should come to a game with
Awesome.
me.
Listen, that's recorded right there. I'm gonna put a marker right there so I can remember that Dre invited me to a game. I'm gonna sit in at his seats and
Yes,
go
sir.
run out on the field. Let me ask you another question again, pivoting slightly again, hitting you from kind of not a sucker punch, but just a different angle. We have both kind of come up within this community, that being the WordPress community. We gonna be all right? I'm gonna leave it at that. I'm just gonna ask: Are we the designers, the developers, the creators, the users, the community? Because and folks, if you don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry about it. Just go out and Google it. Just look at what's been happening within the community and the organizations for this past few months. Is the WordPress community in your mind and your mindset going to be okay?
I think the community will be okay, but I don't think that the community will be the community that we remember over
Yeah.
time. That this type of shift in overall public presence of organizational um, or corporate oversight has been known to ruin many a community.
Mm-hmm.
So the argument that WordPress goes away, I think it's invalid for these reasons. I think over time, what we find is that less people are concerned with the framework and the overall necessity to focus on WordPress or any other platform. It becomes really about that value achieved and what they need to accomplish their needs, how to get their ideas online, how to build strong brand presence, how to
Mm-hmm.
sell from an e-commerce perspective. So that I think is more of a dangerous reach than this corporate scenario that we have going on now. But it will fundamentally shift, I think, not even from an alliance perspective, but how we interact and how we perceive and trust the overall WordPress brand. And it's unfortunate, but the reality is, as you scale in this type of environment, a platform that is so heavily regarded and as popular as it is, it's bound to have interactions at this corporate level that will undermine its overall method of existence.
Yeah. And yeah, there's no good way to answer that, right? I mean, but I wonder this again, Florence. I see. I appreciate you for leaving the comment there. Welcome to the conversation. Listen, this guy right here, you need to be in touch with. Mr. Armeda is a good man. I wonder if that's a new index card that you now have to add to your pitch, right, or to your conversation with folks. Because again, I'm sure you deal with a lot of technology folks. You deal with a lot of folks who want to have a presence online, and again, the primary platform for being online. But then they look at the magazines, they look at the newspapers, and say all of the things that have happened as of late.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, does that take away
yeah.
from the conversation, or have you had to add that?
Yeah, so that's two different things. Has it come up in discussion? Most certainly, but I think it's an easy discussion to have because
Okay.
we can't
Okay.
conflate the overall end users or those that will benefit from the use of a platform like WordPress to get
Mm-hmm.
their presence online, to be SEO ready, to be selling to their consumers. We can't conflate that audience with the community. That's fundamentally different. The
That's a good
community is a
point.
very
Yes.
very focused group or subset of WordPress users and creators that is going to be more emotionally attached, historically connected to the platform than an end user that goes, wow, this really works for what I need to do online, right? And that's
Mm.
what I was saying earlier. We got to disassociate this whole scenario with what I think are maybe bigger detractors to WordPress
Mm-hmm.
beyond these kind of legal matters that come up. So I don't think that discussion to my end users when I am consulting or advising on technical or digital solutions, I don't think that it's as overall demanding on the discussion as it would be if I was working with, let's say, specifically a tech startup in the WordPress space, where now that is an additive risk to their business based on some of the scenarios that are playing out live for us on X every day, right?
The fact that you've strategized and already thought about those scenarios, I think, puts you a step ahead of others who may not have as much experience, again, in designing operational strategy, in designing processes, and designing goals for companies large and small. So I didn't set you up with that question, but again, I wanted to hear, again, I never wanted to assume, but I also wanted folks listening, watching now and on the replay to hear that type of and again, I'm not going to go into details about it because a lot of folks, it's an emotional conversation for a lot of folks.
Of course it is.
Right.
And
hell, I got called out on it once. Hey, I got called out on it once. I put a statement out on Twitter, and I got some replies, some DMs saying, "Hey Jay, check your stats, brother. Check your." So I had to retract and I had to do some more research. So I'm not too proud to brag. I'll check my opinion.
I got some DMs myself, so now I'm with you. You're not alone.
That's all good, man. Listen, that's good stuff, man. And we won't go into that any further because again, that could be a whole nother 4 hours just in that conversation. And we got friends, relationships, and acquaintances on both sides of the discussion. And wish everybody well. But I like the fact of how you differentiated the conversation. Dre, what you're doing with Armeda, not just the color branding, not just the cool coordination of the look and feel, but what you're doing with the value that you're bringing. And that's why I wanted to have you on after you put that LinkedIn statements up, talking about, again, aligning story with the audience and channels, how to craft a multi-channel go-to-market plan, that type of stuff. That's really why I let you kind of go on into detail with your description of your services, talking about achieving operational excellence. Again, early stage startups, a lot of times, us solopreneurs, not just entrepreneurs, don't think about that, unfortunately. And to have someone like you and your team come in with that playbook already, there's value in that. So I'm giving you some flowers, man. Come on. Can a Steelers fan give a Chargers fan some flowers? God,
I will. I look, even though they're in the AFC, I have zero problem with the Steelers.
I'm done with you.
That's the style of football that we're trying to play.
I'm done with you. Okay.
So we're emulating a true known, way of executing on the football field.
Now you making stuff up. You can't even get the words. And now you. Making it.
I like the yellow part of the jerseys. How about that?
That's all you like about it.
Okay. It's good.
All right, I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna leave it at that. I appreciate you, man, and I will leave, or I'll end my diatribe what I'm saying with a quote that you have made, that you have said in the past. The only bad decision is indecision. Let's take action today, and that's pretty powerful. That's very powerful. That resonates to a lot of situations as well. The only bad decision is indecision. So take action today. Dre, tell the folks where they can find you, man, because what you're doing is good stuff, and I want folks to be aware of you.
Well, at Dre Armeda, DREMEDA on X, formerly known as Twitter, or you can go directly to at Armeda as well. Armeda.com, ARMEDA.com, if you want to learn a little bit more about the DreX Method and the things that I'm doing there to help small and early stage startups. Hit me up.
I will put links in the description to all of that, man. You and the family enjoy. You still building Jeeps?
So I've got a YJ.
Talk to us about Stank.
No, so I sold Stank, the original build there, the 2014 build. That thing was amazing. Actually, I ended up putting a Corvette motor in the thing. So I don't know if you followed the journey. I've got some videos and stuff of that online. But I have an old YJ, but after some pretty bad neck issues, I haven't really been able to get into the off-road stuff. But it's sitting there. There's going to be a day where we're going to rebuild that bad boy as well.
I love it. I do follow the journey, and I know you sold it, but then I know you had your daughter, you bought one for her, and so there's you keeping it in the family. Yeah. I love it. That's all good stuff.
There's Jeeps around.
It's Jeeps around. Let's see. Davidson's All Natural Gym talking about the first commercial you ever saw live on YouTube. See, the deal is, Davidson, this is what we do. Part of the, and then we're going to close on this, part of the revenue stream that a lot of times consumers don't understand from a content creator, from a digital entrepreneur, is that through ad revenue. So those are strategically placed within videos and streams such that we, the creator, can get compensated. Right? I never necessarily ask for super chat, super thanks, or whatever that. I don't ask for that. But there is a way to get around that. Davidson's All Natural Gym. I gotta get their real name. They're always on. Buy YouTube Premium. If you get YouTube Premium, you can alleviate the ads. But I wanted to announce that right there. You're like, man, why are you showing commercials on the show? I got to pay for these lights, brother. Got to pay for these lights. Doubt. Dre, be good to yourself, man. I appreciate you. As I was going to say, have a good holiday, man, and let's stay in touch. Folks, I will put all of Dre's contact information in the description so you can get in touch with him and his team and learn that DreX method. Cool?
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, brother.